Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Many people keep banging on about the increase of retro game prices. There's no denying the prices have increased over the last few years, but today we're going to have a look at by how much, and the results are quite surprising. Let's take a look. Right, this video is made possible thanks to a fantastic YouTuber by the name of gmintyfresh. Jeff is a fantastic Shmup lover. He's made some fantastic videos throughout the years. He's been on YouTube for many years. But one particular set of videos that he made a few years ago, in fact in 2011, was he wanted to buy 14 of his dream shooters. So he had set up a budget of £1,200 to buy these 14 games over 12 months. I'll put the link to his series of videos in the box below. Please go check it out. It's fantastic to look back. As I say, that was from around end of 2010 to 2011 he'd done this. So luckily he documented this in these videos very well, the price he paid for the games. He got them pretty much all from eBay. So I've looked back at the videos, I've wrote down all the prices that he's paid, and then over the last sort of few months past, I've been checking eBay for the sold listing prices of all these games, just to compare and contrast to see how much they have actually went up. And as I say, the results are quite surprising. So, as I say, before I start, go check out Jeff's channel. It's fantastic. He's still making videos after all these years. He truly has inspired me in all my shooter buying. Right, so the first game you got, well, not the first game, but the first game on the list is Deathsmiles 2 Limited Edition for the Xbox 360. I'll put a wee picture, hopefully, of it here. He paid £70 for this. He bought it not long after it came out. Not immediately on release, but not long after. As I say, so he paid £70 for this. The average price for this game nowadays, in 2016, July, is £37. So that has definitely came down quite a lot. Possibly because it's not the greatest game. It's certainly not as good as Deathsmiles, and Deathsmiles sold quite well. So that's probably the reason for that. Maybe had an abundance of copies that they couldn't shift. So it's quite a saving that. So there's one example where games haven't exactly went up in price. Next for the 360, it's Mushihimesama Futari Limited Edition. Again, he bought this not that long after it came out. He paid £80 for it. I should state actually that all these prices will be in British pounds, because, well, I'm British. If you want to figure out what is in dollars, like $1.5 to the pound. So Mushihimesama Futari Limited Edition. This came with the game, a soundtrack, I think a 2 CD soundtrack, and postcards or something like that. Fantastic game. He paid £80 for it. Today you can pick it up for around £35. So again, that's a huge drop in price. I don't know why that is, to be honest, because it's a really good game. It might be because there's lots of copies out there. You can still buy it from, I think, PlayAsia. Amazon have it. Amazon Japan. It's fairly common on eBay. Right, so that's the two Xbox 360 games. Next up are a few Sega Saturn games. Now, obviously everyone knows the Sega Saturn is the console of choice for many shooters, many shooter fans, and the prices have rocketed. Not as drastically as you would think, but some are really surprising. We'll start with the biggest surprise for me personally, is a game called Blastwind. Blastwind is a game by Technosoft, and it's sort of a love it or hate it game. Many people love it, like myself. I think it's a fantastic game, but it certainly is poor compared to the Thunder Force series, let's say. It got a pretty poor release for the Sega Saturn. It was very bare bones. It's a short game, only lasts 20 minutes. So it's definitely I think everyone agrees that the price is overrated for its price. Well, Jeff paid in 2011, beginning of 2011, paid £70 for it. So to me that was a good price, that was an average price. I will actually say, the way I've worked out his pricing is he had a guide price that he was willing to pay for the game, and a price he actually got the game for. So I've basically just split the two and took the average price. And that is how I've worked out the average price of the sold listings over the last few months. So yeah, so Blastwind, £70 he paid for it, and this is absolutely terrible. the average price today is £230. That is phenomenal. I don't understand how it's went up that far. Blastwind isn't exactly the most desirable with the shooters. As far as I'm aware, there's lots of copies around. It certainly doesn't have the reputation of Radiant Silvergun, so I have no idea how it's rocketed that high. It's nowhere near worth £230. £100 maximum for that game. Radiant Silvergun, the game everybody knows. If you're a shooter fan or not, everybody knows about Radiant Silvergun. And many people think this is a super expensive game. It actually isn't that bad. Jeff paid £100 for it 5 years ago. The average price today is only £120. I don't know, it's always in supply and demand, that game. People always want it. It's a show game for people's shelves. So I don't know why it hasn't quite rocketed up in price. Obviously it's a lot of money to pay for a game, but it's quite surprising that how it's only went up £20 in 5 years. HyperDuel, that was the most expensive game available for the Saturn in shooter terms. Really good game, but not a lot of people know about it outside of the shooter world. Certainly not as well known as, say, Radiant Silvergun. Jeff paid £120 for that 5 years ago. I happened to pay £200 for it 2 years ago, so you can see the increase. And then today's average price is £300. Again, I can't quite understand why that's rocketed up. Unlike Blastwind, HyperDuel is an excellent game, but it's certainly not worth £300. And finally, for the Sega Saturn, you bought a special edition of Cotton 2. This actually came with a teacup. It's a really unique sort of bundle. It's probably one off. I don't know any other game ever came with a teacup. If you don't know about Cotton games, it specialises around the teacup. There's a thing about the tea time, bonus stage, tea time, bonus stage, and things like that. So these are very uncommon. So he paid £88 for it back then, which is a good price. Today they don't come up that much, but when they do, you're looking at around £160. But a bigger surprise is the actual game, Cotton 2 game, used to go for around £45. Now it's about £80, so that's pretty much doubled in value. Cotton Boomerang, on the other hand, which is the third version of the game, that is out of the park nowadays. You'll pay a few £100 for that game, but that's a different story for a different time. Right, so that's the Sega Saturn games out of the way. Next up is a PlayStation 1 game, Harmful Park. Now I don't actually know if Jeff managed to pick this up. He had budgeted for £120 for that, and I'm assuming that that's the going rate at that time in 2011. Today, you're looking at around £260 for Harmful Park. So again, that's quite an increase. I don't actually know why it shot up that much, because it did get a release on the Japanese PlayStation Store. So I would have thought that would have brought the price down a little in Japan. But it became much more well known in this country thanks to some of the bigger YouTube channels. I know, like Metal Jesus and that, I've mentioned it before, and that always ranks up the price on some of the games. Next up is Ibara for the PlayStation 2. This one really surprised me. The PlayStation 2 port of Ibara is notorious for being a piss poor port. It really is poor compared to the PCB, but it is still a desirable game. Jeff was budgeting around £120 for that game 5 years ago. Now the average price is £110. So that's pretty much stayed roughly the same, which is a huge surprise. What isn't surprising is the actual PCB of the game. You used to be able to pick that up for cheaper than the PlayStation 2 version, but now, oh Christ, there's one on sale for eBay there now with the artwork, which obviously adds to the price, but I think it's like £900. So you're looking at a good few £100 to pick up a PCB Ibara nowadays, which is ludicrous. Right, Dreamcast games now. Zero Gunner 2, a game close to my heart, a fantastic game. I really do love it. It is quite well known. It's always been desirable. £58 it was 5 years ago. Today, around £80. Some of the auctions did vary quite wildly. Some were over £110. Others were around the £67 mark. I paid £65, I think, for it a few years ago. So it's kind of hovering around that mark. But again, it has went up, but not by a huge amount in the 5 years time. Gigawing 2 on the other hand, Not a very good game in my opinion. The first Gigawing is fantastic. Second one, I could leave it, to be honest. £40 it was 5 years ago. The average price now is £42. I think the reputation's kind of caught up with Gigawing. That's not the greatest of games. The American version does seem to go for much more, about £70, but I think that's due to the lack of shooters for the American Dreamcast. Twinkle Sprites, fantastic puzzle game, original on the Neo Geo. It had a Saturn port, PlayStation 2 port. The Dreamcast port is the cheapest of the bunch, it always has been. Jeff paid £30 for that. Nowadays you're looking at around £65, which is again double the money, but not a huge jump up compared to the Neo Geo version, which is rocketed in price, a few £100s. Even Neo Geo CD version I think is like £70 or £80 nowadays. But a really good game, well worth checking out. One Mega Drive game, one of my favourites actually, is Gleylancer. Not that well known in the Mega Drive world, outside the shooter world, sorry. Many people think Musha is the best game on the system in terms of shooters and things like that. That's debatable. I think Gleylancer is definitely up there with the top 3-4 shooters on the system. 5 years ago he paid £109 for that, and he actually commented in his video how it was really expensive at that time for a Mega Drive game. Well, nowadays you're looking at around £220, so that game has doubled in value. Doesn't sell too many copies, to be honest. There's a huge abundance of reproduction games floating around eBay now. I think a lot of people, along with Eliminate Down, are happy to own a reproduction nowadays because the prices are getting sort of up and up and up. Second for last is a PC Engine game. We only picked up one PC Engine game, and that was a Soldier Blade. Soldier Blade is arguably the best in the series of the Soldier games on the PC Engine. Truly is spectacular what that game does for the PC Engine. For an 8-bit system, it fucking blows everything out of the water. It's fantastic, rocking music, fantastic graphics, a great game. Sadly the price reflects that now. He paid £35 for it 5 years ago. Nowadays you're looking at about £72 for a complete copy. So compared to some other games on the PC Engine, that's not too bad. Certainly the dearer Hue card games like Tatsujin, Terra Cresta, they're all in the £200 mark. But £72, to be honest, for Soldier Blade is worth it. It's a fantastic game, but again, doubled its value. It's seen a bit of a trend going on here. And last but not least, last resort for the AES, Neo Geo AES. This used to be one of the more affordable games. It's a fantastic game, but it used to be one of the more affordable games for the AES in terms of shooters. Certainly Polestar was a lot more expensive, and Viewpoint I think used to be up there as well. It used to hover around the £150 mark. Well, Jeff paid £118 for this game, which I remember at the time was a good price, an average price, but it's a good price. But this game, oh my god, it just seems to rocket. I don't know if it's just because it's Neo Geo stuff now, or if it's because it's becoming more desirable. But an average price now for Last Resort AES in good condition is £320. So almost 3 times its value. I don't know what to say about that. I think everything in the Neo Geo world has went up. It's big money collecting Neo Geo, and it seems to be even bigger money collecting. So yeah, but again, it's still a good game. But the Neo Geo CD version could be had for around £20. So it's. Speaking of the shooters, Polestar on the AES now I think goes for like £4,000. That's fucking unreal. So the grand total for Jeff's games 2011 are £1,148. Those same games today, 5 years later, will come to £2,051. A whopping £903 difference. That is unfucking believable. As you can see, that's my findings. The games obviously have went up in price, but not as much as you think on some of them. Some of them are sort of balanced out. I've always found it strange in the shooter world because compared to other systems, other genres and that, people, it tends to be the hardcore collectors that collect shooters, so we've really only ourselves to blame for the price increase in them. But I would love to be able to see other people out there that collect for different games, different systems, particularly SNES. I know there's a lot of big SNES collectors out there. Perhaps you'd like to do a follow-up to this video and show us the difference in some of the prices that you've paid for games. Shooters, obviously my area, it's not especially that, but it's the area of preference. So yeah, so there you go guys, thanks for watching this video. I'll see you next time.